Citizen action organizations are another type of interest group. They represent the public's interest on a wide range of social and environmental issues, and many are large, national, and permanent. Citizen action organizations use the same tactics as economic interest groups to reach decision makers, but they rely much more on mobilizing their membership to act. In 1996, President Bill Clinton signed the Welfare Reform Act and ended a 60-year-long federal guarantee to help the poorest people in our nation. 6 years later, many politicians praised the reforms for cutting welfare rolls by half. But critics pointed out that extreme poverty and poverty among single working women had risen despite a booming economy. Hundreds of grassroots groups joined forces to advance an anti-poverty agenda behind the banner of a new coalition, the National Campaign for Jobs and Income Support. Despite a paid staff of only 15, the national campaign had a profound effect on federal policy. LaDon James was one of the national field organizers. Like many of the low-income leaders she worked with, LaDon herself was once on welfare.
I became a single parent, and I was attending college, and I was worried about how was I going to make sure that I could get to my doctor's appointments and have some sort of coverage. How am I going to make sure that me and my son have some food to eat? It was really, really hard.
LaDon's own experience on public assistance fueled her own opposition in 2002 to the welfare overhaul plans proposed by President Bush and advanced by his allies in Congress.
Bills and laws that are being proposed is becoming more punitive and really making the victim the villain.
The national campaign's director, Deepak Bhargava, assailed President Bush's proposal in dozens of newspapers.
The Bush administration has proposed dramatically increasing the work requirements for welfare mothers. And specifically, they've done that without increasing funding for child care or transportation or education and training by a single dime.
A week after the White House released its plan for welfare reform, the national campaign convened a big tent rally on the National Mall. It brought together leaders, organizers, and allies from around the country.
We brought 2,000 people to Washington really to send a signal to Congress and the administration that this time around there was going to be a real fight on welfare reform.
We're telling you here today, stop the war on the poor! Stop the war on the poor! Stop the war!
The rally featured a much-anticipated speech by Senator Max Baucus, head of the Senate Finance Committee, which would write the Senate's version of the new welfare bill.
Working together is the only way to do anything serious in Washington these days. And I'm not going to do something, however, that'll hurt low-income working families.
It was really important for him to be there because we needed to know where he stood on these issues, and we also needed to have him see that across the country there's a movement. Across the country there's a momentum.
After the rally, the national campaign worked closely with Senator Edward Kennedy to draft an open letter to the heads of the Finance Committee. Signed by Kennedy and other prominent Democrats, the letter laid out a set of proposals for welfare reform, including transitional jobs programs, support for child care, and restoration of benefits to legal immigrants.
The Kennedy letter was a mini campaign for the campaign, for the national campaign, because the goal was to have as many senators as possible to sign on to this letter. And this letter was very influential because it showed that the senators were coming together and standing strong on these principles.
One senator who resisted signing the letter was Hillary Rodham Clinton. Clinton had appeared to be an ally of the campaign. But after promising grassroots groups early in 2002 that she would not sign on to the welfare bill sponsored by conservative Democrats Carper and Bayh, Clinton did just that.
We had kept trying to educate her, telling her this is not a good idea. Their bill is not the place that you want to be. But she still went along and negotiated with them and signed on to this bill. As a result of that, people in New York were furious and decided they're going to just lash into her and take it to a different level.
So on May 21st, LaDon worked with grassroots groups to bring 200 leaders to D.C. to demand that Clinton stop waffling on welfare.
We took waffles, in which we waved and we sang and we chanted and we protested outside her house, demanding that she take a position.
Meetings with Senator Clinton had not persuaded her, so the national campaign felt an unannounced house call was their last best option.
This is a means of getting attention. Folks that are impoverished don't have the big bucks that some of these corporations have to put into campaigns. They have their vote, they have their voice, and they have their bodies. And because sometimes these actions are a whole lot of fun.
Although nobody answered the door, the protest drew major press coverage and led to an immediate shift in Hillary Clinton's position.
Stop waffling on the issues.
As a result of doing this action, she did sign on to the Kennedy letter pretty much the next day.
Direct action paid off again for the campaign when protesters at a high-priced fundraiser in New York struck a chord with Senators Debbie Stabenow of Michigan and Patty Murray of Washington. The two lawmakers agreed to send a letter to their women colleagues in the Senate urging them to attend a meeting with low-income leaders.
It was a very exciting time for these women to have a chance to not only just share what their experiences are or have been or will be on public assistance, but to really talk about some solutions that can really work to reduce the poverty levels in this country.
An even bigger victory came a week later when the Senate Finance Committee passed a welfare bill that included most of the provisions the national campaign had been fighting for.
The way that the Senate Finance Committee was able to come together and pass this bill just shows that folks from the communities can make them see our point of view.